The great hall of the alien palace was a place of silence and shadows. High walls curved like the inside of a massive shell, covered in carvings that glowed faintly with soft light. The air was heavy, as if every breath carried the weight of countless eyes watching. At the center, upon a wide throne made of black stone, rested the Queen of the Empire. The alien queen was feared across the stars. She was tall, her presence sharp as a blade, and her crown shimmered with jewels taken from 100 conquered worlds. Many bowed at her name, yet in her heart she carried doubt. The war with humans had ended only recently, and though peace had been signed, she did not trust them. Humans had risen too quickly, too stubbornly, in battles where stronger races had fallen. The queen wanted to know what made them different. Were they simply reckless, or was there something hidden within them that the other races lacked? She would not ask directly, for a queen never showed curiosity. Instead, she planned quietly, shaping tests as traps, searching for proof of weakness. That day, the test was small, almost playful in her mind. She would pretend to fall asleep upon her throne. She would wait to see how the humans reacted, for among her guards stood one of their kind, a soldier who had fought bravely in the war, now sworn to serve the empire. Beside him was his daughter, a young girl who often sat near while her father worked. The court whispered about it often. Why did he bring a child to the palace? But the queen allowed it, for reasons she never explained. Perhaps she wanted to see what a human child was like, or perhaps she enjoyed watching the unease it brought to her nobles. Either way, the girl was there that day, small and quiet, holding a piece of cloth she had been folding into shapes. The queen's eyes drifted closed, her body still and regal. The hall grew tense. No one dared speak when the queen appeared to rest, for even in slumber her presence filled the room like a storm cloud waiting to break. The alien nobles watched carefully. They had been told of the plan. Their eyes turned toward the human guard and his daughter, waiting for a mistake. The human guard stood tall, his face unreadable. His armor was simple compared to the shining plates of the alien warriors, yet he carried himself with quiet strength. He had seen too much war to be shaken by silence. His daughter, however, was different. She was young, her hair tied back with a plain ribbon, her eyes bright and curious. Minutes passed. The queen did not move. The hall grew colder with silence. The girl, Lena, shifted on her feet. She looked at her father, then at the queen, then back again. Her father gave no sign. His duty was clear, he must guard, no matter what. But Lena was only a child, and children carried no such heavy rules in their hearts. Step by step, Lena moved closer to the throne. The nobles leaned forward, whispers slipping between them. Would the child laugh? Would she touch the crown? Would she speak foolish words? The queen waited, hidden behind her closed eyes, sharp and ready. She wanted to see disrespect. She wanted to see proof that humans were as weak as she believed. But Lena did not laugh. She did not touch. She simply stood at the foot of the throne, her small hands holding the folded cloth flower she had made while waiting. Her eyes studied the queen's still face. For a long moment, she only watched, as if searching for something beyond the crown, beyond the throne, beyond the fear that everyone else saw. Finally, in a small, soft voice that carried across the stone hall, Lena whispered, "Are you tired?" The words were so simple, yet they broke the silence like a crack of light through dark clouds. The nobles froze. Even the guards turned slightly, shocked that the child had spoken aloud to the queen. The human guard's heart beat hard in his chest, but he dared not move or speak. The queen did not answer. She lay still, holding her test. Inside, however, she felt the first prick of surprise. Of all the words she had expected, these were not among them. Not greed, not mischief, not bold disrespect, only concern. The hall waited. Lena stood quietly, clutching her cloth flower, unaware that her simple question had already unsettled the mightiest ruler in the empire. And on her silent throne, the queen thought to herself, perhaps this test will not be as simple as I believed. The throne room remained still, as if time itself waited. The queen's eyes were shut, her form unmoving, yet every noble in the chamber leaned forward with sharp attention. They watched the small human girl who now stood at the foot of the throne. Her name was Lena. She was no soldier, no warrior, only the daughter of a guard. Her father stood at his post near the heavy doors of the hall, silent and stiff, his eyes forward though his heart burned with worry. He had no right to speak. If his daughter did wrong, she would answer for it. But he knew her nature. She was kind, curious, and fearless in a way only children could be. That fearlessness now placed her in the center of a dangerous test she did not even understand. The nobles whispered. Their voices were low, but they carried sharp edges. She will touch the crown. She will insult the queen. She will reveal the weakness of humans. They waited for failure, for proof that these strange newcomers did not belong within the empire. Lena looked up at the queen's still face. The silence of the hall pressed against her, but she felt no fear. To her, the queen did not look frightening in that moment. She looked tired, as if the weight of the crown and the heavy throne pressed down on her shoulders. Lena's small fingers tightened around the cloth flower she had made earlier. She had folded the scraps carefully, turning them into something gentle and bright in a place of shadows. She leaned forward slightly, whispering again. Are you sleeping? You must be very tired. The sound was soft, yet it carried across the hall. The nobles stiffened. None dared to speak to the queen in such a tone, not even when she was awake. Lena tilted her head, studying the queen's stillness with childlike honesty. She waited for an answer, but none came. The queen did not move. To Lena, this seemed strange. Grown ups always answered, even if only with stern words. Perhaps the queen really was tired. Her small feet carried her closer. One step, then another, until she stood only an arm's length away from the throne. Gasps slipped through the court. To approach the queen uninvited was a bold act, but Lena's eyes were innocent, untouched by thoughts of disrespect. She looked only at the queen, not at the crown, not at the jewels. When she reached the last step, she lifted her hand. In her palm rested the little flower of cloth. She placed it gently on the queen's lap, the fabric soft against the black stone seat. This is for you, she whispered. It keeps away bad dreams. The hall was frozen. Not a sound rose from the nobles. Even the guards, trained to remain still as statues, glanced at the tiny gift lying in the queen's lap. The queen, behind her closed eyes, felt the weight of the moment. She had expected greed. She had expected boldness or disrespect. She had even expected the child to run away in fear. But not this. Not a small act of kindness that held no selfishness within it. Her pride resisted the feeling that stirred in her chest. She told herself it was meaningless, a trick of chance, nothing more. Yet the silence in the hall spoke otherwise. Every noble who watched had seen something they did not understand. A child who should have trembled had instead given. The alien queen's sharp mind turned quickly. Was this softness weakness? Or was it something else? Something hidden, something humans carried that her empire could not measure? Still, she did not move. She held her role, letting the test continue. Lena, seeing no answer, did not pout or retreat. She simply smiled, the way children do when they have done something they believe is good. She looked back at her father across the hall. He did not move, but his eyes softened for a moment when they met hers. That small comfort was enough for her. The nobles, however, began to murmur again. Some scoffed at the child's act. Foolish. Meaningless. Childish softness. Others, quieter, said nothing at all. For though they mocked, a question had planted itself in their minds: why had the girl done it? What strength allowed her to step forward where even seasoned warriors hesitated? The queen heard their whispers. She kept her eyes shut, but her mind grew unsettled. The child had not failed the test. If anything, she had turned it upon the queen herself. The silence stretched once more. Lena, still standing at the throne, gave a small nod to the queen as if satisfied she had done her part. Then she stepped back, slow and careful, returning toward her father's side. She did not run. She did not lower her head. She moved with the calmness of someone who believed her act was natural and right. When she reached her father, she looked up at him. "She is very tired," she whispered softly. The guard said nothing. His face remained still, but his chest was heavy with pride and fear. He knew the queen would awaken soon, and when she did, no one could predict her judgment. Across the hall, the nobles leaned closer to one another. The air trembled with their curiosity and doubt. Some wanted punishment. Others wanted silence. But all of them waited for the queen to open her eyes. And though she remained still, the queen's thoughts moved like fire. The test she had planned so easily was no longer simple. The child had changed it. And in her heart, though she would not admit it aloud, the queen already knew this was only the beginning. The throne room was still heavy with silence. The queen had not moved, her eyes closed as though she rested in deep sleep. Yet her mind was sharper than ever. Every word, every whisper, every step of the human child echoed within her thoughts. Her test had been simple: pretend to sleep, and wait for weakness. She had believed the child would falter, reach for the crown, laugh at her stillness, or reveal foolishness that proved humans did not belong in her empire. Instead, the girl had placed a gift in her lap and spoken words of care. This was not the result the queen had expected. It unsettled her, though she would never admit such a thing. And so, with quiet pride pushing her forward, she told herself she would continue the test. She would set a trap, sharper and deeper, to show that even kindness could break under pressure. The nobles grew restless. Some muttered for punishment, others argued that silence itself was punishment enough. But the queen, even in her still pose, raised her hand slightly, a gesture so small yet so commanding that every voice died away. She had not opened her eyes, but her people knew her will. The test was not over. Lena, the little human girl, now stood beside her father once again. She was calm, holding her father's hand loosely, her eyes still watching the throne as if waiting to see whether her gift had been accepted. The cloth flower sat unmoved on the queen's lap, simple and fragile against the dark stone seat. Minutes stretched. The queen's silence became a weight upon the chamber. Then, without warning, she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing with a cold light, and she sat taller upon the throne. The hall immediately dropped to silence deeper than before. The queen's gaze swept across the nobles first. Her eyes narrowed, sharp as blades. Then she turned her head slightly, and her attention fell upon Lena. The girl did not flinch. She only looked back, wide-eyed and curious. "Step forward," the queen said at last. Her voice carried across the chamber, strong and steady, though beneath it was a thread of something else, something even the queen herself could not name. Lena hesitated, glancing at her father. The guard's heart beat fast, but he could not defy the queen's command. He gave his daughter a small nod, though inside he prayed she would be safe. So Lena stepped forward again, her small feet tapping lightly against the stone floor. When she stood before the throne, she tilted her head in that same innocent way. The queen's fingers brushed the cloth flower that lay upon her lap. She lifted it slowly, holding it between two long, elegant claws. The fragile fabric looked almost foolish in her powerful hand. "You placed this upon me," the queen said. "Why?" Lena's answer came without pause. Because you looked tired. My mother used to make these for me when I could not sleep. They kept away bad dreams. I thought you might need one too. The nobles scoffed. Some even laughed softly behind their hands. To them, the idea that the queen of the empire could suffer from bad dreams was laughable. Yet none laughed loudly, for the queen's gaze silenced mockery before it could grow. Her eyes narrowed upon the girl. You think a simple cloth can guard a queen? Lena shook her head gently. Not the cloth. The thought. Someone caring helps more than things. The words struck deeper than the queen expected. For a brief moment, she felt a flicker of something unusual, a memory of when she herself had been young, before the crown, before the weight of empire. A time when someone's simple kindness had meant more than jewels or treasures. But she pushed the thought away quickly, burying it under the iron of her will. Still, she pressed further, her trap not yet sprung. And if I told you that your gift is worthless? That your kindness means nothing here? Lena looked at her, unshaken. Then I would still give it? Because it matters to me. And maybe one day it will matter to you. The chamber grew tense again. Even the nobles, so quick to mock, now fell into silence. They could not understand this strange courage, this refusal to bow before sharp words. The child was not rude, not bold in arrogance, but steady in her belief. The queen leaned back slightly, her claws closing around the cloth flower. Her plan had been to catch the girl in weakness, to turn her kindness into shame. Yet the child's simple honesty left no crack for the trap to close upon. Instead, it was the queen herself who felt caught. Her gaze drifted briefly toward the human guard. He had not moved once. His face was stone, his posture straight. But his eyes burned with both pride and fear. Pride for the daughter who stood fearless before a throne that made warriors tremble, and fear for what judgment might come. The queen's jaw tightened. She could not allow the hall to see her shaken. She rose from the throne, standing tall, her figure towering over the small human girl. The cloth flower rested in her palm. The test is not finished, she declared, her voice echoing against the walls. You will remain. I will decide in time if your kindness has worth. The nobles bowed, hiding their unease. The queen's tone carried command, yet even they sensed that the trap had not ended as she wished. Lena bowed her head slightly, not out of fear, but out of simple respect. Then she stepped back toward her father. Her father's hand rested briefly on her shoulder, steadying her as she returned to his side. The queen looked down at the flower one last time before placing it carefully upon the throne beside her. She told herself it was meaningless. She told herself the test would continue. But deep inside, in a place even she tried not to look, a quiet thought whispered, perhaps the humans carry something we have forgotten. The great hall of the palace felt colder than before. The queen now sat upright on her throne, her eyes open and sharp, the small cloth flower resting quietly beside her. Though she had declared the test unfinished, the silence in the chamber told another truth: the child had already shifted something that no noble or soldier had dared to touch. Lena stood again at her father's side, her small hands folded together, calm as if she had not just faced the most feared ruler of the empire. Her father, still at his post, gave no sign of his feelings, though inside he held both relief and unease. He knew the queen well enough to understand that her pride would not let this matter end so simply. The nobles whispered among themselves. Some still laughed softly, calling the girl's gift meaningless. Others frowned, their eyes lingering on the human child longer than they wished. For the first time, doubt had crept into their minds, though none would admit it aloud. It was then that one of the alien nobles stepped forward. His frame was tall and armored, his crest of silver plates rising high above his head. His voice was smooth, but it carried sharpness like hidden blades. "My queen," he said, bowing low, "this child's actions are amusing, yes, but surely they prove nothing." Humans are simple creatures. They dress their weakness as kindness. A throne cannot be guarded with cloth toys. The court murmured in agreement, the sound swelling like the rumble of distant thunder. The queen narrowed her eyes. She had not commanded this noble to speak, yet she allowed him, curious to see where it would lead. The noble turned his gaze upon Lena. "Child, you stand in a place beyond your understanding. Do you truly believe your kind belongs here, among us? You are fragile. You are small. When storms rise, it is your people who will fall first." The words echoed in the chamber, cruel though spoken with a calm smile. Some of the nobles chuckled. Others nodded, proud of the insult. Lena looked at him quietly. For a moment, it seemed she might shrink back into silence, as any child might when mocked by someone older and taller. Her father's chest tightened. But then, to his astonishment, Lena lifted her chin. She spoke softly, but her words carried across the hall. "My father protects people even when no one thanks him. He stands in the cold and heat, he faces danger, and he does not stop. Humans are strong because we care. That is why we do not fall first." The chamber went still. Even the noble who had mocked her faltered, caught off guard by the steadiness of her answer. The queen watched closely. Her heart stirred again with that strange, unwelcome feeling. The child's words were not loud, not filled with anger, but they carried something far more dangerous to pride: truth. The mocking noble's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, towering above the girl, his voice colder now. "Strong? You call that strength? To care is weakness. Mercy bends the blade, and kindness softens the shield. What will care do when armies march? What will love do when fire falls from the sky?" Lena did not flinch. She looked up at him and answered simply, "It will make us stand together. That is stronger than any blade." The silence that followed was heavy and deep. The noble had no quick reply. The queen herself felt a twist of unease, for the child had spoken words even seasoned leaders struggled to defend. Finally, the noble gave a sharp hiss of frustration and stepped back, unwilling to press further. His pride was wounded, though he masked it with a bow to the queen. The queen leaned back slightly, her claws resting on the arm of her throne. She studied the child with a gaze both sharp and thoughtful. The nobles had expected her to laugh, to dismiss the human girl, to call her foolish. Yet the queen did none of those things. Instead, she said, "Many speak loudly, but few speak with honesty. This child has done so without fear." The court shifted uneasily. Some lowered their eyes, unwilling to meet the queen's stare. Others clenched their jaws, disliking the idea that a human child could earn her notice. Lena, meanwhile, only gave a small smile. She did not fully understand the weight of what she had done, but she knew she had spoken from her heart. Her father finally allowed himself the smallest breath of relief. His daughter had stood in the center of the storm and had not broken. But the queen's mind was far from settled. She had set a trap, hoping to reveal weakness, and instead she had seen strength where none should have been. Not the strength of weapons, nor the strength of armies, but something harder to measure, something invisible, yet unshaken. It unsettled her pride. It stirred questions she did not wish to ask. And most of all, it planted a seed of respect she had not planned to give. The queen's gaze drifted back to the flower resting on her throne. Its cloth petals were fragile, its form imperfect. Yet it remained where it had been placed, untouched by the whispers, unshaken by the laughter. Much like the child who had given it. The queen closed her eyes briefly, as though to still the thoughts rising within her. Then she opened them again and raised her voice so that all in the chamber would hear. "The test continues," she declared. "Do not mistake my silence for conclusion. This hall will see more before judgment is given." The nobles bowed quickly, hiding their frustration. The human guard lowered his head as well, though inside his heart was steady with pride. And Lena stood by him, her eyes bright, unaware that her simple courage had already bent the course of the queen's thoughts. For the first time in years, the queen felt the weight of uncertainty pressing upon her throne. The throne room remained quiet long after the queen's words had ended. The nobles bowed low, some hiding anger, others hiding confusion. None of them had expected the human child to speak with such calm honesty. None of them had expected the queen to let the words pass without punishment. The queen herself sat tall on her throne, but inside, her mind was restless. She had planned to expose the child's weakness. Instead, the child had exposed something else, something the nobles could not laugh away. Strength hidden within simplicity. Courage without arrogance. It unsettled her more than she wished to admit. Still, the queen would not allow her court to see hesitation. She tightened her claws around the arm of the throne, her gaze cold and commanding. "Leave us," she ordered at last. The nobles obeyed. They bowed again and retreated, their heavy robes sweeping across the stone floor. Soon the chamber emptied until only the queen, the human guard, and his daughter remained. The silence grew heavier without the whispers of the court. The queen's eyes fixed on the guard. "Step forward." The man obeyed, moving with disciplined steps. His armor clinked softly as he knelt at the base of the throne. His daughter, Lena, clung lightly to his hand before releasing it. She stood at his side but did not kneel. Her wide eyes stayed on the queen. The queen studied them both. The soldier was steady, unshaken, as always. He had stood before death in war and had not flinched, she knew his type well. But the child was different. She did not kneel, not out of defiance, but out of innocence. She looked at the throne without fear, as though it were no different from any chair in her small world. The queen's voice rang through the chamber. "Do you teach your daughter to speak boldly to rulers?" The guard lowered his head. "No, my queen. She speaks only what she believes." "Then you allow her too much freedom," the queen replied sharply. Yet her eyes did not leave Lena. "Child, do you not fear me?" Lena tilted her head. "Why should I? You are strong, but strong people can still be tired. Strong people can still need care." The words fell like quiet stones in the vast hall. The guard tensed, fearing the queen's wrath. But instead of anger, something else flickered in the queen's gaze. A memory old, unwelcome, but alive rose within her. Long ago, before the crown, before the endless wars, someone had once spoken to her in that same way. Not as a ruler, not as a conqueror, but simply as a person. The queen forced the thought away, but it lingered stubbornly. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "You believe care is strength. Yet care is weakness when enemies strike. Do you not see that?" Lena shook her head gently. "No. When someone cares, they stand together. When many stand together, they are strong. Even storms cannot break them." The queen sat back slowly. She had expected the child to stumble, to falter under pressure. Instead, the girl's simple truth had turned her own words against her. This was not how the test was supposed to end. The guard remained kneeling, silent but proud. His heart swelled, though he hid it beneath his soldier's stillness. His daughter had spoken not only to protect herself but to speak for their people. The queen lifted the cloth flower again, turning it in her claws. Its folds were uneven, its edges frayed, yet it carried a strange weight now. It was no longer just a toy. It had become a symbol of something the nobles could not measure: a gift without demand, strength without arrogance. She placed the flower back beside her throne. "Rise," she said to the guard. He stood, his hand resting lightly on his daughter's shoulder. The queen's gaze lingered on them for a long moment. For the first time in many years, she found herself without clear judgment. "This test was meant to show weakness," she said finally. but it has shown me something else. Perhaps your kind carries more than I believed. The guard bowed his head in silence. Lena smiled softly, as if the queen's words were the most natural thing in the world. For a moment, the queen almost smiled back. But she caught herself, her pride pulling her expression back into its usual mask. She rose from her throne, tall and commanding, and her voice thundered through the hall. The test ends here. But this is not the end of my watching. Human strength is not yet proven. I will see more, and I will judge with my own eyes. The guard bowed deeply. Lena only nodded, as if she accepted the challenge without fear. As they turned to leave, the queen's eyes drifted once more to the flower. Her claws tapped lightly against the throne. She had set a trap, but it had sprung upon herself. Instead of proving human weakness, she had glimpsed their hidden strength. And though she told herself she remained in control, a quiet truth whispered within her heart: she had underestimated them. The nobles would never know the depth of what had happened. They had seen only a child's words and a queen's silence. But the queen herself knew the truth. Her test had backfired. And in that failure, she had begun to see why humans could not be measured by the same weight as other races. The palace was quiet that night. The vast halls, usually filled with the steps and voices of nobles, seemed empty under the glow of soft light set into the walls. The queen remained in her chamber, sitting alone by the tall windows that looked out over the city below. From this height, the lights of the capital stretched far, a sea of silver and blue. Her hand rested upon the small cloth flower, which she had carried with her after the throne room had emptied. She turned it slowly in her claws, studying its imperfect folds. It was such a simple thing, fragile and without value, yet it had unsettled her in a way no war, no rival, no council had done. Her thoughts returned to the child's words: "It matters to me. And maybe one day it will matter to you." She had built her rule on power, on fear, on the certainty that strength was measured in armies, ships, and victories. Yet this child, who had no army, no crown, no throne, had stood in her hall without trembling. And in that stillness, in that simple gift, the queen had felt something she had not expected: truth. But truth was not easy to accept. Pride pressed against her, whispering that it was nothing more than childish foolishness. Still, her heart remembered, no matter how her mind resisted. The next day, the queen summoned her council again. The nobles gathered, tall and proud in their jeweled robes. They expected judgment, perhaps punishment, for the humans who had unsettled the queen's court. Instead, the queen spoke in a voice that carried across the chamber. "Yesterday," she said, "I was given a gift. Not of jewels, not of gold, but of thought. A child placed it in my hand. Many of you laughed. Many of you saw weakness. But I did not." The nobles shifted uneasily. Some lowered their eyes, others frowned, uncertain where her words were leading. The queen's gaze swept across them. "You call care weakness. You call kindness a burden. But tell me what kept humans standing in the war we fought against them. Was it strength of body? No. Many of you are stronger. Was it skill of weapons? No. Many of you are sharper. Yet they endured. They endured because they stood together, not for fear, but for each other." Her words echoed, filling the hall with a weight that silenced even the most prideful noble. The mocking noble from before stepped forward, bowing low, though his voice carried doubt. "My queen, you honor them too much. To value care is dangerous. Care makes one hesitate. Care makes one slow. Rulers cannot afford to care." The queen's eyes narrowed. "You are wrong. Rulers who cannot care cannot last. Power alone burns out, but care binds people together. That is strength you cannot see because you do not wish to." The noble faltered. He lowered his head, saying no more. From the side of the chamber, the human guard stood silent, his daughter beside him once again. Lena listened with bright eyes, though she could not understand all the weight of the queen's words. She only knew that the queen no longer looked at her with doubt, but with something else, something close to respect. The queen rose from her throne, standing tall before her court. Humans are not lesser. They are not weak. They are different. Their strength is not in their claws or their crowns, but in their spirit. I have seen it with my own eyes. You will see it too. The nobles bowed deeply, though not all agreed. Their pride resisted, but none dared to challenge her openly. The queen turned to the guard and his daughter. She stepped down from the throne, her movements slow and deliberate. The chamber watched in shock as she approached them. Never before had the queen left her throne to face a guard. She stopped before Lena, her towering figure casting a long shadow over the small child. For a moment, silence hung heavy, as if the entire empire held its breath. Then the queen lowered herself slightly, her eyes level with Lena's. "Child," she said, her voice calm yet firm, "yesterday I sought to test you. I sought to find weakness. Instead, you showed me something I had forgotten. You reminded me that strength is not only in power but in care." Lena smiled softly. "I only told the truth." The queen looked at her for a long moment before placing the cloth flower back into Lena's hands. "Then keep this. Let it remind you that even queens can learn." The hall was stunned. The nobles could not believe what they had seen. A ruler who had conquered worlds had bent herself, even slightly, before a human child. Yet none dared to speak. The queen straightened again, her voice carrying finality. "From this day forward, humans will not be seen as lesser. They will serve with honor. They will be respected as allies. Let this hall remember strength is more than the weight of the throne." The guard bowed deeply, pride swelling in his chest. Lena clutched the flower, her eyes shining. She did not fully grasp what had just happened, but she knew the queen's words carried power. As the court bowed, the queen returned to her throne. Yet within her heart, she felt lighter than she had in years. The test she had created had broken her pride, but in that breaking, it had given her something greater, a lesson of humanity. The days that followed were unlike any the empire had seen before. The queen's words in the throne hall had spread quickly, carried by whispers through the palace, the markets, and the distant colonies. Some spoke with awe, others with disbelief. A ruler who had bent her pride to honor a child's truth, such a thing was unheard of. But change, once spoken aloud, could not be silenced. The human guard walked the halls with a new respect. No longer did other soldiers sneer at him in quiet corners. Instead, they watched carefully, some with curiosity, some with doubt. Yet none could deny the queen's command. His daughter, Lena, became a quiet symbol. Wherever she walked, eyes followed her not with scorn, but with a strange wonder. The queen herself seemed different. Though her presence was still fierce, there was a new weight in her voice when she spoke to her council. She asked more questions, listened longer, and paused before judgments. The flower of cloth, once dismissed as a trifle, remained near her throne, set upon a carved stone table. To outsiders, it seemed strange. To those who knew, it was a reminder. Still, not all were pleased. In hidden chambers, some nobles whispered that the queen had grown soft, that she let humans poison her mind. Yet they did not dare act, for the queen's authority was absolute. One evening, as the queen walked the palace gardens, she saw Lena sitting beside a fountain. The child's feet dangled above the water, her face turned upward as she studied the stars. The queen approached quietly, her heavy steps softened by the moss beneath her boots. "You look far away," the queen said. Lena turned, surprised, then smiled. "I was just thinking. The stars are so many. Do you think someone else is out there, watching us?" The queen looked up. The sky was endless, filled with glittering lights. For the first time, she did not see them as distant prizes to conquer, but as mysteries waiting to be understood. Yes, she said slowly. Perhaps they are. And perhaps, one day, we will watch them together, not with war, but with understanding. Lena nodded. My father says we are small, but even small things can make big changes. The queen studied her. Such simple words, yet filled with a strength many warriors lacked. She reached down, brushing her claw gently over the fountain's water. He is right. And so are you. Months passed. The empire began to shift in small but certain ways. Humans, once overlooked, were invited to serve not only as guards but also as advisors and teachers. Their ideas, often modest, carried surprising weight. They spoke of unity, of helping one another, of finding strength not only in victory but also in survival. Some alien scholars laughed at these notions, but the queen silenced their mockery with a single glance. Do not laugh at those who endure, she warned. For survival is the first wisdom of every people. In time, the queen ordered something that startled even her closest counselors. She commanded that schools be built where the young of every race in the empire, alien and human alike, could learn side by side. If care is strength, she declared, then it must be taught early, before pride can erase it. Her words rippled through the empire, stirring debate, even outrage. Yet they also planted seeds. Seeds that would take years, perhaps generations, to grow. One morning, the queen called for the human guard and his daughter. When they arrived, she stood before the great window of her chamber, the city's light shimmering below. She turned to them, her face solemn but calm. I tested you once, she said to Lena. I pretended sleep, thinking I would catch weakness. Instead, you gave me strength. Because of you, I have learned more than I thought possible. And because of you, the empire itself will learn. Lena lowered her head, shy yet proud. I only wanted to help. The queen smiled faintly, a rare expression that softened her sharp features. Sometimes the smallest wish carries the greatest weight. You have given me more than help, child. You have given me a new path. The guard, standing tall, bowed deeply. Your Majesty, my daughter is only a child. But if she has shown you something good, then I am proud. The queen's voice grew firm. Do not doubt it. Her truth will echo beyond this palace, beyond this city, beyond even this world. She stepped closer, resting a heavy hand upon Lena's shoulder. One day, when people speak of this empire, they will remember not only the battles I won or the lands I ruled. They will remember that a child reminded their queen what true strength means. Lena looked up at her, eyes wide. And what is true strength? The queen's gaze was steady. To care, even when it is easier not to. To stand, even when the world says kneel. To give, even when you have little. That is strength. And that is the legacy you have begun. Years later, stories of that moment would spread across the empire. Some would call it the lesson of the flower, others the child's truth. But no matter the name, it became a tale told in schools, sung in halls, and remembered in whispers. And though the queen would continue to rule with power and command, there was always something new in her reign, a gentleness that had not been there before, a respect that shaped her decisions. In the heart of the empire, the cloth flower remained. Its colors faded with time, its fabric worn, yet no treasure was guarded more closely. For within its fragile folds was the memory of a child who had changed a queen and through her, an entire world.